S.R. Bhatt as our chairperson, and we have Gishingon Samdenla, Professor Asanga Tilla Ratneji, and Dr. Rana Purushottam as our speaker for this session. And unfortunately, Professor Kang Negi was not able to attend the session because of last-minute urgency. So before proceeding, let me introduce bit about our chairperson, Professor S.R. Bhatt. Professor S.R. Bhatt is an eminent... It's okay, just breathe. Professor S.R. Bhatt is an eminent philosopher and Sanskritist, and he... It's okay? Okay, then may I request chairperson to continue the session without taking much time.
Revered Bhikshu Sangh and distinguished delegates on and off the dais, good afternoon. We have a very scholarly panel of three eminent scholars, Professor Geshe-la Nwang Semten, Professor Asanga Tilakratne, and Professor Rana Purushottam. And the theme also is very much of not only theoretical significance, but practical importance, as it deals with the three higher trainings, and the background would be nature of ultimate reality. Straight away, I would request Professor Semten to make his presentation. Professor Semten, please. This is Asian Philosophy Conference. I will send it by post.
Namaha Samandabhadraya Namaha Samandabhadraya Namaha Samandabhadraya Namaha Samandabhadraya Samanda Sparanatushwe Togetawa Namsenji Sabikaji Kunga Kundo Sambovese Kwena Chola Respected Sangha members, the chairperson, Professor Bhatt, Professor Asanga Tilakratne, Professor Purushottam, Kishe Tojdamdula, the distinguished scholars and friends. The topic I'm giving is, I'm sorry, my phone is ringing.
The topic is philosophy of concept of duality and non-duality in Mahayana Buddhism.
Yes, the topic is non-duality. So, to set the tone, In India, the non-duality has drawn attention of many philosophical schools and spiritual traditions in India for millennia. And India had been in the past for millennia a very fertile soil for the origination of religious systems, multi-religious systems, and philosophical systems. Not only that they grew, but there took place a very sound interaction among them, which helped each other to grow further, particularly in the context of philosophy, epistemology, and logic. If you look into the developmental process of various philosophy, then you can find how they interacted, very rich interaction. To the extent that, if you read those original texts of individual philosophy, the philosophical treatises and epistemological treatises and the logic treatises, then you can find how closely and how profoundly they interacted. It is said that sometimes when a treatise was written in Kashmir, then from Karnataka, the response comes in 2 months' time. And then the response was not just for rejecting and refuting and simply for the sake of argument, but they received the arguments that was advanced from the other side and then contemplate it, and if there is something acceptable, they accept it and make it as a part of their system, and then go further, advance further their own system. That is how the whole system developed so profoundly, soundly, richly. So that is why we can say that in India, this rich, I normally say, samvriddh samvad, very rich, interaction that cannot be seen anywhere else in the world. So this very topic, non-duality, has also, drawn attention of so many philosophical schools, and also not at the intellectual level, and they are meant to be contemplated, practiced, and then integrated into their spiritual life. So there are many schools with the name of non-duality as well. We can see that the Vijnanavada school of Buddhism is non-dualistic in the sense that it rejects the existence of the external world and maintains that only mind exists. And it maintains the mind as an absolute entity. So, since I have to take care of my time, so I want to, go into elaboration. So now we can see that how they got interacted and influenced, and we can see the flavors of other, the philosophical elements in other philosophical systems. For example, I would like to, draw your attention to Advaita Vedanta, right? The name itself is non-dual Vedanta, right? Upanishad. So the Shankaracharya was charged to be by many of the other schools Prachanna Bauddha, which means that the disguised Buddhist who has claimed to be a Hindu philosopher. So which means that the philosophy that he presented was very richly and strongly influenced by Buddhist philosophical elements. So you can see here now Gaurapad is the teacher of Shankaracharya, Adi Shankaracharya. So in one of his work he says, na utpatti na nirodha na badhaha na sadhakaha na mumukshoho na muktaha iti paramarthaha. There is no creation, no destruction, no hindrance, no practitioner. There is no one who desires a liberation, and there is no one liberated. This is the ultimate reality. So now you just juxtapose this with the Acharya Nagarjuna's, very well-known the Mangalacharan of Mul Madhyamika Karika, which is anirodham anutpadam anuchedam ashashvatam anekartham mananartham anagamam manirgamam yah pradita samudupadam prapanjopashamam shivam deshyamasa sambuddhas tam bande vadadam varam. So now you see, almost the same, no utpada, no uchedaha, no nirodhaha. It's almost the same. So I prostrate to the perfect Buddha, the best of all teachers, who taught that that which is dependent origination is without cessation, without arising, without annihilation, without permanence, without coming, without going, without distinction, without identity, and peaceful, free from fabrications. So now, if you look at the facial kind of appearance of these, two passages that I have put before you, then it is almost difficult to identify which one of these is what, right? So if we just, put the author's name, I'm sorry. So then, so when we juxtapose these two systems or two statements, they apparently look so close, but underneath that, it's totally different. According to Shankaracharya and Gaudapada, there is a self which is substantial, which is permanent, right? Which is eternal. Whereas according to Acharya Nagarjuna, there is no substantial entity at all, but all are dependently arisen. But if you read the philosophy of, to some extent, they look so, identical, and also the language they use and the analogies they use are very much similar. And the approach of, to some extent, the analysis is also very much similar. So this is the beauty of the Indian systems, that they grew in the same garden, and on the same cultural ground, and then how they differ with their own intellectual insights and spiritual insights, right? So then we can see the apparent similarity between the views of Advaita Vedanta and Madhyamika philosophy has led some scholars to interpret Madhyamika's Shunyavad as absolute, whereas Acharya Nagarjuna and his followers have emphatically and explicitly rejected the absolute nature of every entity, including that of ultimate nature. So now here is an interesting passage in Mula Madhyamika Karika. Aparaparteyam shantam prapanchaira aparpanchitam nirvikalpam ananartham ananartham etat tattvasya lakshanaha shalamishi shivata shalamishi shivata travanam gyamato mato namdo medun thademe tenen tingi singidos, not dependent on another, peaceful and not fabricated by mental fabrications, not conceptualized, without distinct. This is the characteristic of things as they really are. I'm not going to deal, in detail, but I will pick just one word, one of the characteristics of the five that Acharya Nagarjuna has mentioned, the nature of reality or the ultimate reality. Now here, we have a Professor T.R.V. Murthy. So I would like to just, narrate a story that, how much minute we have? We have 20 minutes? Or, yeah.
Someone has to find out about the time also. Huh?
Okay. So I was asked to speak on at Indian Philosophical Council, Buddha Jayanti lecture. It was a prestigious lecture. So I thought to make a presentation on the contemporary Indian scholars' approach to, Madhyamika philosophy. So I thought to take Professor T.R. Murthy, who has wrote a wonderful book called the Central Philosophy of Buddhism. Became very popular and is very well written. However, there are some kind of elements, because Professor T.R.V. Murthy was a very good Vedanta scholar and a Sanskritist, as well as a very good scholar of Buddhism. But at some point like this, there he slips, and he construes the tattva according to Madhyamika philosophy as a tattva according to Vedanta philosophy. Now, how he does that? So when I presented that, then after my presentation, a few of the Vedantin scholars came to me from the very traditional scholars. Swamijis came to me saying that we are very happy to listen to your talk, because we thought that Madhyamika and Vedantin are absolutely identical, because T.R.V. Murthy has presented like that, and there was no refutation or any argument or any kind of reaction from Buddhist side. So we were thinking that it's almost the same. So today we are very happy that you have pointed out some of those things. So we are happy that they are very different from each other, although there are many commonalities, right? So what Professor T.R.V. Murthy has written with this very aprapratyam, the real tattva is the absolute and the self-conceived and the self-existent aprapratyam. Conversely, the dependent is appearance. So this is exactly what the Brahma Tattva is, according to Vedanta, which is absolute, which is real, and which is self-conceived. But here, I'm not going to quote the Prasannapada and those things, lack of time. But in that article, I have quoted from Prasannapada and how, that is not consistent with the Acharya Chandrakirti's, philosophy and things like that. So you can see, and then Acharya Tsongkhapa says, related to this, from the perspective of direct perception, the nature of reality is as follows. Just as one does not have a cataract, not even the mere appearance of falling hairs is seen, all the fabrications of dualistic appearance is terminated. Now, the ultimate reality, the emptiness, there does not exist anything that is not dependently arisen. Therefore, there does not exist anything that is not empty. So now, this in Mula Madhyamika Karika, if you go through the entire 27 chapters, then you can find that even in a single shloka there are many reasonings. Even in a single shloka. So that is why the approach is from multi-pronged and from so many different angles. Nagarjuna, presents the emptiness. That is why in the examination of the 27 kinds of entities, he has brought in each of the chapter. He has brought so many different approaches. Okay, 5 minutes. Thank you. And then we have dependent on causes and condition, dependent on parts and whole. So yesterday also, some made a very good presentation. Now here, dependent on causes and condition, Sautantrikas and all the Buddhist philosophical schools, maintain that it's a very strong foundation in Buddhism, causality, right? But causality, to understand causality, Sautantrika, for example, maintains that the causal system in a very, detailed way and profound manner, but the cause, according to Sautantrika and Vaibhashika and Vaisheshika, cause and effects are all substantially existent. That's a very important thing to understand. And at the same time, when we talk about parts and the whole, again, according to Sautantrika, the whole is a conceptual mental construct, but the part is a substantial. So again, it's important. at that philosophical level, they do not get to that level of understanding these substantially existent as dependently originated, merely imputed. So when one comes into the madhyamika stage, then all these are mentally and verbally designated. So I won't go into the details. So that is how one reaches from those levels. That is why each of the Buddhist philosophical schools is as a staircase to reach to the higher level of school. So why emptiness is important for us? Acharya Nagarjuna says, through the elimination of the karma and afflictions, there is nirvana. Karma and afflictions come from conceptual thought. These come from mental fabrications. Fabrication ceases through emptiness. So nirvana is attained through the elimination of karma and affliction. When the affliction and karma are eliminated, birth, aging, death will be eliminated. By eliminating what will be the affliction, what will the afflictions and karma be eliminated? The karma relevant to birth in cyclic existence arises from afflictions. The afflictions arise from conceptual thought, improperly taking the things as beautiful or not beautiful. But these afflictions do not exist inherently. These improper mental attitudes rise from being accustomed from beginningless time to the varieties of fabrication, that is, fixation on the true existence of things such as knowledge and object of knowledge, expressions and meanings, the pot and cloth, men and women, obtained and unobtained. The fabrication, that is, the grasping of things as truly existent, is eliminated through familiarization with the view according to which all objects are empty of inherent existence. Emptiness is precisely that which one realizes through meditating on the view of it. When the seed of the affliction is eliminated as the culmination of meditation, that emptiness, the termination of fabrication, is called liberation and attainment of nirvana. Now, phenomenological non-duality. When the yogi enters into the meditative equipoise with the total absorption into the emptiness, there is the experience of non-duality. 2 minutes. Thus, the very purpose of realization of emptiness with the non-dual state is to free from all the fabrications, that is, without the appearance of a conventional world. In the post-meditative state, as the practitioners, the Aryas, the exalted beings do have the appearance of object as truly existent, but they do not cling to the objects as truly existence. Eventually, at the stage of Buddhahood, non-dualistic meditative equipoise and the post-meditational state go simultaneously. But this is not possible at the before attaining Buddhahood. But as I said, that in meditative equipoise there is a total absorption, where there is a total kind of, we can say, a union of the emptiness and the observer, the wisdom. And this kind of very state, at the time of as a trainer, the meditative equipoise, and then once you are out of meditation, then you are back to the world. But once the Buddhahood is attained, then these two things happen together, being in the world at the same time being in the meditative equipoise. That is the special characteristic, one of the many special characteristics of the Buddha. So I think I should end here. But non-duality actually is for practice, and to bring changes in our perception, how we perceive world, how we perceive ourselves. Through that we can bring some changes. It is not for intellectual exercise, but to bring some changes. When we study non-dual and the non-dual philosophy and those deep philosophical treatises, our purpose should be to address our own inner afflictive mind and suffering world. So unless we do that with that kind of motivation, if we don't do it, then our very purpose of a study is not served. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Simden, for
very erudite and scholarly, but very erudite and scholarly, but partly debatable. But conclusive remarks very much useful. In fact, non-duality has been an overriding principle in classical Indian thought and culture, right from the Vedas. The Nasadiya Sukta of the Veda says, Anida Vatam Swadaya Tadekam. That one was the ultimate real, existing by itself. So, this idea of non-duality was there right in the Vedic times.
Yeah, that's Vedantic.
I'm coming to that. No, it's not time for me to enter into a debate. But the idea was that there is one ultimate reality which manifests itself in multiple forms. This idea continued and in Buddhism also we do talk of Buddha Bhava, which is shared by all beings. I would go to the extent of saying living as well as non-living. Everyone shares the same Buddha nature, and therefore in that sense there is non-duality. Sharing the same essence. Every living being has the capacity to attain Sambodhi, to attain nirvana, and therefore may have that sort of mutual sharing of Buddha Bhava. Nagarjuna says, Yah pratitya samutpada shunyatam tam prachakshmay. That pratitya samutpada is Yah pratisvamadvam pashyati sa dharmam pashyati. Dharmam pashyati sa buddham pashyati. So, if that is so, then the pratitya samutpada also has two facets. We call them anuloma and pratiloma. And accordingly, Nagarjuna says that there is no difference whatsoever between samsara and nirvana. One is the process of anuloma, other is the process of pratiloma. So basic identity is there, and so apara pratyayam shantam, that verse you quoted, etat tattvasya lakshanam. Yeah. Now what is that tattva? We do have concept of tatatta. Concept of tatatta is a very seminal concept of Buddhism. What is that tatatta? Suchness or thatness. I think we shall have to discuss the details about that suchness and in what way we have to understand it. But my submission would be that according to Buddhism, as it is in the quantum physics also, there is fundamental unity of all existences. This is Schrödinger's position, fundamental unity of all existences. I think Buddhism also believes in fundamental unity of all existences, and that's why Shantidev could talk of Paratma Samta and Paratma Parivartan. Otherwise, there would not be much meaning in these cryptic statements. But anyway, it was really a wonderful presentation, and we are grateful to you. No, really it was very thought-provoking. Something to be pondered over, seriously. Now I request Professor Asanga Tilak Rakne. He is a doyen of Buddhist philosophy in Sri Lanka and president of Sri Lankan Buddhist Association.
Just make it a little larger.
Bigger.
Okay. So I can go down like this. Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Bhatt. Learned audience. I am supposed to be speaking on concept of duality and non-duality in Theravada. In fact, I can give a very simple answer to this very deep question. There is nothing like this in Theravada. And before being branded a heretic, let me explain what I mean. When you really look at the larger Indian picture of religion, you have the concept of duality, multiplicity, and unity, ekatva, bahutva, nanatva. You know, this is the basic religious language in the Indian context. So, Advaita Vedanta, non-duality, denying the subject and object duality. Now, when I said that there is nothing like this in Theravada, what I really mean is, in the Theravada tradition, there is no tradition of articulating, what we consider to be the ultimate reality, nirvana, in any of these terms. And also, in my own philosophical training, I have a huge problem of calling nirvana the ultimate reality, because in my own research, I have tried to establish that we are not talking about reality as such, we are talking about an experience. Of course, if you want to call experience reality, that's fine, but experience is ultimately the experience of each individual person, not something existing over and above or some in a metaphysical sense. So nirvana has not been perceived in that sense. Having said that, now looking from the point of view of duality and concept of duality and non-duality in Theravada, there are several ways you can talk about this concept, how duality functions within the Buddha's thinking. I basically base my presentation on the Pali Canon, and towards the end of my discussion I will move on to Nagarjuna a little bit, but here I have so one way of looking at duality will be what I would like to call ethical dualism. Now at this level, out of these dualities, at this level ethical opposites are accepted and the one needs to be overcome by its opposite. We say akkodhena jine kodham, conquer anger by love, conquer evil by good, conquer stingy by giving, conquer the liar by truth. Now there are dualities, but of course these dualities you can see that one is preferred always. So with the help of one, you remove the other. So in that sense, we can talk about ethical dualisms as being accepted. There is a duality in ethical behavior, and you need to use one in order to avoid the other. Now that is a very basic accept of what we like to call in the scheme of Sila, Samadhi, Prajna. That is the very basic assumption, very basic idea. You avoid bad by means of good. Now, that is pretty simple, so you prefer one over the other. However, when you move on to the other things, what I would like to call ideological dualism, both need to be given up. Now there is one place, of course I have given reference to several places which I am not going to be describing, but asked by a person called Sabhir, how is one called enlightened? Buddha says, bhavancha vibhavancha bhavancha vipahaya. So you giving up both annihilation and becoming. Now, these are two main extremes of ideologies. On the one hand, annihilation, on the other hand, bhava, or the everlasting existence. So Buddha says that you have to give up both. So now ideological dualisms, you have to give up these things, means ultimately you have to avoid either extreme. Now this whole concept of Majjhima Patipada, Madhyama Pratipada, the middle path, is given from the very first discourse of the Buddha, Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, where he advises his listeners to go beyond the extremes. Now, having gone beyond extremes, of course, it is not a amalgamation of both extremes and going into some position, but it is something different. Now basically, very often we understand that it's a combination of both two extremes and some kind of milder position. However, you can see that this is not what is intended. Now, in below here, I give you several instances basically from Sutta Nipata. This particular one, number 4, Naheva Sachani Bahuni Nana, Anyatra Sanyayani Chani Loke. Takkancha Diktisu Pakappayitva Sachang Musati Dvaya Dhamma Mahu. So people refer to, Buddha says, Satya and Musa. So Satya and Musa are again two different the extremes. And Buddha says it has to be given up. And then the next one, number 5, is again very important. Giving up all ascetic practices and holy vows. Silabbatang chapi pahaya sabbang kammancha savajjanavajja metang. Kammancha savajjanavajja metang. Buddha says you must avoid both savajja and anavajja kamma. Savajja means considered to be ethically wrong. Anavajja means actions considered to be ethically right. So there Buddha says give up both. Suddhin asuddhinti apattayano. You also give up the concept of purification and impurity. Now again, these are kind of alarming things. On the one hand, we have a whole book of Visuddhi Magga, path to purification. And the Buddha talks so much about Visuddhi, but here we find Suddhin Asuddhinti Apattayano. You must not be aiming at either Suddhi or Asuddhi. And then Viratochare Santi Manuggahaya, you without getting attached to any of these things, you do your practice or live your life. So savajja, anavajja kamma, suddhi, asuddhi, these fundamental things are again given up. So, but what it means is really, I know it is intriguing, how can you give up suddhi? Because nirvana is considered to be the suddhi, purification. Nirvana is considered to be the vimutti, liberation. But Buddha here says that you give up these things. Actually here we are talking about different level of ethical behavior where you don't identify either with this or that. Now that's a very, I would say, very advanced state of spiritual development or inner development. On the one hand, you start with good and bad and rejecting bad with the help of good. However, at some point you will have to go beyond all these things. And then is something very interesting in number 6. Buddha says, Ajjattame upasamena anyato bhikkhu santi mesaya ajjattang upasantas natti atta kuto niratta. For such a person there is no something called atta. Then Buddha asks, if you don't have atta, how can there be niratta? Now this logic is very familiar to those people who are familiar with Nagarjuna. So if you don't have atta, it's pretty simple, you can't have niratta, because there is nothing to be denied or rejected. So Buddha asked this very same question, natti atta kuto niratta. Natti atta, there is no atta, then how can there be niratta? Now on the other hand, we know that we are talking at some level, Buddhism is anatmavada. But here Buddha says that give up both. And again number 7, we have the same thing, natti meti na sochati, so on. And number 8, again, you have a similar thing, you don't accept, you don't reject. So now at this level, of course this last one I would like to refer to here, although it is not directly related, but I found that I'm fond of this because I'm teaching this gender and Buddhism course in Columbia University, so why not I just give it here. It says that yasanuna siya evang ittaham purisotiva kinchivapana anyasmin tammaro attumarahati. One whom it might occur, I am a woman or I am a man or I am anything at all, is fit for Mara to address. That means fit for Mara to address means you are responsible for Mara. You have to give your reasons for Mara. So this again is very interesting. Ultimately, we are divided between man and woman, our femininity and masculinity. But here one of these 6th century BC women in the Buddhist tradition saying this, what is wrong with being a woman? I mean, then he says that if you are really caught up in this dichotomy, then you are in the domain of Mara. So you have to go beyond this dichotomy. So in other words, up to this point, what it is here is, of course, this last point is a little bit more social. But philosophically, at some point you start with ethical dualism, accept in the reality of that dualism. Then when you go deeper into the inner practice, you transcend that. And then looking at what's usually we call metaphysical views. We have 10, or in the Mahayana tradition sutras, 14 what is called avyakruta questions. Now this again, avyakruta questions were kept aside by the Buddha. Interestingly, avyakruta questions are whether the universe is eternal or not, whether the jiva and atma are the same or not. Now when you look at these questions, you can see that of course there is a lot of scholarly discussion on these things. I am not going to go into them, but basically some of these questions are false. For example, when you talk about tang jivang tang sariram, whether the jiva and sarira are the same, whether the atma and the soul are the same, very fact that if you accept the question, you are caught up in the trouble, right? Because unless you accept atma, jiva, you can't answer that question. So Buddha kept it aside, because accepting that very question is, putting yourself into trouble. However, T.R.V. Murthy gave this very interesting metaphor to Buddhist scholarship that Buddha was silent. Ever was, we have been using, I think T.R.V. Murthy published in mid-90s, 50s, ever since we are talking about Buddha's silence. But, I have been intrigued by this all along. Buddha has never been silent, actually. Only thing is, he has not given a yes and no type of answer, but he has talked a lot about it. So it's wrong to say that Buddha was silent about this, but Buddha has not given answer. I know that Murthy must have meant a metaphorical thing, but of course, why I am saying this emphatically is, although knowing it, because when we go to the domain of silence, ultimately, philosophy is no use, conferences are no use if you go to the domain of silence. Whole point of it is we are talking. So I think things have to be in the domain of speech. So, you can go into the domain of silence, then of course you must keep silent. But we are not ready to do that. So, seriously, what I'm saying is Buddhism doesn't talk about that kind of silence domain, where language is not applicable and you cannot talk about it. Finally, let me wind up my presentation with reference to Nagarjuna. Again, very interesting, so much has been said about Nagarjuna. And also, the concept of Shunyata. Nagarjuna starts by saying Sarva Drusti Prahanaya Yah Sadharma Madeshyat. So the Buddha's whole purpose was to give up all the drustis, Sarva Drusti Prahanaya. Now, I'm quoting here and there. Shunyata sarva drustinam prokta nisharanam jinai. Yesham tu shunyata drusti tan asadhyan babhashire. So the interesting thing is, ultimately Nagarjuna says, Shunyata is not really a theory. Shunyata sarva drustinam nisharanam. Shunyata is to give up all the drustis. So it is not another theory. It is not a super theory over and above all the other theories. It is a practice. It's a meditation. It is something you do. So Shunyata is to give up all the drustis. Yeshantu Shunyata drusti tan asadhyan babashire. For whomever Shunyata becomes a drusti, those people are incurable sick people. So this is what Nagarjuna says. And then you can see that he refers to Katyayanovada Sutra. Katyayanovada Astiti Chastiti Nobhayam. So there where the Buddha rejects both Asti and Nasti. And then having rejected both Asti and Nasti, Buddha says why he rejects Asti and why he rejects Nasti. And ultimately, you give up all drustis by means of Shunyata. Having given up all drustis by means of Shunyata, you give up Shunyata itself. Now, here I give the Katyayanovada Sutra translation, which we don't need to go. Conclusion is, the middle path of the Buddha avoids extremes, which I referred to earlier. Theravada does not advocate a non-dual position transcending dualities as the ultimate solution. As explained in the Katyayanovada Sutta, having given up the dualities, one needs to see things as they have come to be. This is Yata Bhuta. Usually this has been translated as things really are, but I would rather go with my teacher Kalupahana, who translate this as they have come to be. Grammatically, of course, Bhuta is a past participle, so Kalupahana's translation is grammatically more correct, and also I mean, we can have a debate about it later. Early Buddhist phenomenon of accepting or rejecting dualities depending on context may be explained with reference to two truths, Sangruti Satya and Paramartha Satya. Actually, this again a very interesting tool we can use to understand this. When I said good has to be developed, I mean good has to be developed with the help, bad has to be given up with the help of good. There, of course, we are talking in a different level. And then ultimately, you have to give up both good and bad. Arahant in the Buddhist context is described as Punya Papa Pahinasa in the Dhammapada. Arahant is a person who has given up both Punya and Papa, both good and bad. Now, in that sense, we can talk about what is the Theravada view of duality. Of course, at certain level, we can say Theravada accepts duality, particularly when it comes to the sila, morality, you accept the good and bad, and you behave, you try to, develop your life ethically. However, when you advance more and more into the inner development, ultimately there is a point where you have to give up all the attachment to all kinds of concepts, and this becomes exemplified in the Buddha's statement in the Alagadupama Sutta Majjhima Nikaya. Buddha says, Dhammapi pahatabba. Even the dharmas have to be given up. Now Buddha says very famously there, dharma is like a boat or raft which you use in order to cross over. Having crossed over, out of sense of gratitude, you don't keep it on your back and go, you just leave it there. So that's the whole point. Ultimately, you give up dharma. However, that doesn't mean that you become a dharmic person or anything, but simply because your last attachment was your vehicle, and then you cross over, you give up your vehicle. Having crossed over and give up your vehicle, of course, there are multitude of things for you to do, help others, teach others, and so life is not going to be empty. But he would do that not like a gung-ho Buddhist, who is trying to propagate Buddhism or anything, but he would still teach the teaching of the Buddha with very open and free mind. I think that is to what ultimately this whole thing leads to. Therefore, to wind up, Theravada Buddhism, I'm not really criticizing or finding fault with the ideas expressed very often about something like Tad Ekam type, Upanishadic thing. I'm not denying, I'm not saying that it is wrong or something. What I'm simply saying is Buddhism has understood what it considered to be nirvana, which has never been called ultimate reality. We don't have a Pali term for that, okay? So nirvana has never been called ultimate reality. So nirvana has never been articulated as Tad Ekam. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Tilakratne, for a very enlightening and also interesting presentation with regard to Pali Buddhism, known as Theravada, correlating it with the Nagarjuna. Buddha, of course, was not a nihilist. And therefore, it would not be proper to say that he would deny reality of any existence. Of course, nihilism is one extreme, and eternalism is another extreme, and he was a follower of the Madhyam Marga. But with regard to nature of ultimate reality, we do have statements like Nirvana is the ultimate reality, and we say Nirvanam Shantam. Or some in Dhammapada we say Nirvanam Paramam Sukham. What does it mean? It means perhaps it is pure existence, which is blissful in nature. So I think that tattva could be understood in terms of pure existence and pure experience.
Nirvana is fun. That's what Nirvana is.
And no, but then what is the goal? The goal is nirvana, and therefore we have to take it to be the ultimate. Well, when Dharmakirti in his Nyaya Bindu, the first sutra is that Samyak Jnana Purvika Sarva Purushartha Siddhi. all purusharthas, all human enterprises are based on proper knowledge, and this purusharth is the culmination of human endeavor. Well, what is that point of culmination? We say that point of culmination is nirvana, and then it must be in the form of paramam sukham. Anyway, it's a matter of debate and discussion, but certainly there is something called silence also. And Dharmakirti, therefore, in his Prasannapada says, Paramarthe tu Aryanam tushni bhavaha. With regard to the Paramarth can be translated as a ultimate reality. Aryam is the wise people, just remain quiet. That means there is a difference between prapancha and prapancha upashama. He has already referred to prapancha upashama in that karika. Prapancha is the realm of duality. It's a display of our conceptual categories, and it's a level of ethics, as you have rightly pointed out. But when there is prapancha upashama, when the duality is dissipated, well, we reach to the non-dual. And that non-dual, this is prapancha upashama. Cessation of duality means realization of a non-duality, realization of a fundamental unity of all existences. I think this can be one of the implications which I would like to draw from a Buddhist message.
So we have other questions for this panel.
Yeah, we will discuss that. Anyway, we transcend ethics, that is realm of duality, and go to spirituality, which alone is the realm of non-duality. Now I call upon another distinguished panelist, Dr. Rana Purushottama. Rana Purushottam ji is a very well-read scholar, having visited many East Asian countries and lectured there. He is, in fact, many publications, articles and books to his credit. He has worked intensively in Philippines, Pakistan, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, China, etc. in search of a tangible as well as intangible Buddhist heritage. So we are very much privileged to have Dr. Purushottam with us, and we look forward to his enlightening discourse. Dr. Rana Purushottam.
Namo Buddhaya. Respected Chairman Sir, Professor Samten Sir, Professor Tilak Ratne, Gesela, the Director of Tibet House, Professor Devkar, Professor Vimlendra Kumar. I am really thankful to Gesela for providing me opportunity to be here. The title of my paper is The Higher Trainings in Theravada with a special reference to morality. This is very simple topic. I may say this is the basics of Buddhism, alphabets of Buddhism. Without knowing these three trainings, higher trainings, we can't understand Buddhism. And my simple paper is explanation of two verses from Pali literature. One is Sabba Papasya Akaranam Kusalasya Upasampada Sachitta Pariyodpanam Etan Buddhana Sasanam. Not doing the sinful act. Cultivation of moral tendencies and purification of our own mind. This is the three things, this is the crux of teachings of all Buddhas. In Theravada Buddhism, in Digha Nikaya, we have description of 6 Buddhas and later on 24 Buddhas. So, these 3 things are the basic teaching of all Buddhas. The second verse, that is from Devta Sanjukta Nikaya, Sile Patitthaya Naro Sapayo, Chittang Payang Cha Bhavyang, Atapi Nipiko Bhikkhu, Soimang Bijataya Jatanti. Here, there was a question on complexity of life. And the Buddha gives Sile Patitthaya Naro Sapayo. On the basis of seal, one pragyavan person who cultivates their consciousness, their wisdom, with the help of cultivation of wisdom and consciousness, one can open up the complication or can remove the complexity of life. Here, Seal, Samadhi and Pragya in Milind Prashna, this is very important text in Pali. There is discussion on the characteristics of Seal, characteristics of Samadhi and characteristics of Panya. Patitthana Lakhanang Seelam. What is Seal? Seal is the base, foundation of all moral tendencies. Pamukh Lakhanang Samadhi. Samadhi has the characteristic to lean towards the ultimate goal. When you are sitting in Samadhi in proper way, moment by moment you are leaning towards the ultimate goal. What is Panya? Pragya, wisdom. Ovhasan Lakhan Panya, Chedan Lakhana Cha. When wisdom arises, your mind becomes enlightened. And you have the capacity to eradicate immoral tendencies, immoral psychic factors, immoral things from your personality. So, and on the basis of all these things, Buddha claimed to be enlightened, and he said, Yada have patu bhavantu dhamma, atapino jhayato brahmanasya, athasya kankha vapayanti sabba, yato pajanati sahetu dhammam. When the nature of Dhamma is clear to a mendicant Brahmin or mendicant meditator, their all doubts are removed. And he knows the Sahetuk Dhamma, the dependently originated world, the dependently originated phenomena. So, and on the basis of Seal, Samadhi and Pragya, Buddha deconstructed the old system and reconstructed the new one. And because of this Seal, Samadhi, Pragya, 3 higher trainings, one can get Samaya Phal, the visible result of a mendicant life. From today you will start following the Sila, the Samadhi. When the Pragya will arise, then you will see the visible result in your personality, in your life. So on the basis of this, the Samaya Phal can be attained. Now, this is a small paper, very simple one. So this is explanation of these verses, whatever I have recited. The 4 Noble Truths are among the most fundamental schemes delineated by the Buddha. The understanding of 4 Noble Truths is tantamount to the attainment of goal of Buddhist practice. The 4 Noble Truths can be formulated as the truth of suffering, the truth of cause of suffering, the truth of cessation of suffering, and the path leading towards cessation of suffering. The fourth truth consists of Noble Eightfold Path that leads to the end of suffering. The 8 steps of the path have been divided into 3 ways of practice or training. That is morality, sila, mental development, samadhi, and wisdom, panya. These 3 steps of training are dependent on each other. Morality, the first of these ways, forms the foundation of further progress on the path leading to personal development. It is said that just as the earth is the basis of all animate things, so morality is the basis of all positive qualities. When we look around us, we can see that everything rests on earth. In the same way, morality is the foundation of all qualities, all virtues, all attainments, ranging from the mundane to supramundane, from success and good fortune to a skill in meditation, and ultimately to wisdom and enlightenment. Mental development, samadhi, the second way of training, is placed between good conduct, seal, and wisdom, pragya. This suggests that mental development is relevant and important to both. Moreover, it is the very aspect of training that safeguards the practice of good conduct, seal, by strengthening the capacity of mind and attaining control over it. Mental development serves as guarantor to the observance of the precepts and at the same time assists in the real objective of seeing things as they really are. Mental development prepares the mind to achieve wisdom, which opens the door of freedom and enlightenment. For the attainment of freedom, the most effective way is wisdom, pragya, which cannot be gained by any other means except mental purification. It is a third step of training in Theravada Buddhism that has to be achieved through meditation. The attainment of wisdom is the transformation of all doctrinal items from mere objects of intellectual knowledge into real personal experience. In Buddhism, wisdom is the key to the realization of goal of religion. While in some religions we observe that faith is paramount, other traditions attach prime significance to meditation. In Buddhism, however, faith is preliminary and meditation is instrumental. Thus, wisdom forms the core of Buddhism. Seal, because my paper is concentrating upon seal, seal is the foundation of mental and spiritual development. Seal is the first of 3 higher trainings in Buddhism. It is an extremely important aspect of Buddhist scriptures. Seal is manifested in non-violence, friendliness, compassion, sympathy, etc. All moral tendencies are merged in non-violence only. Generally, it is defined in Pali scripture as the spiritual mental factor of seal, where all physical, vocal, and mental purity rests. Thus, the moral intentions behind the action is referred to as seal or morality. Here, morality has 2 aspects, internal and external. In different texts of Pali Tripitak, the method of description of seal differs. The Brahmajala Sutta and Samayafal Sutta of Dignikaya discusses 3 types of seal morality, that is Chul seal, minor morality, Majjhim seal, middle morality, and Mahasil, major morality. The Visuddhi Magga, Reverend Buddha Ghosh is also very important. The Visuddhi Magga of Reverend Buddha Ghosh is also very important text to know the seal. Here in Dignikaya, the Chul seal, Majjhim seal, and Mahasil, the division is totally based on psychological aspect, the psychological depth of your physical and moral characteristics. Chul seal describes the gross psychological offenses, the gross psychological activities. Majjhim seal, the middle psychological tendencies, and Mahasil, the most subtle psychological tendencies which affects your personality very deeply. The classification of Dignikaya is very lucid and important. The first division, that is Chul seal, minor morality, discusses the gross psychological aspects of morality. Here Dignikaya says that, I quote Dignikaya, a bhikkhu abandons all thoughts of taking life and abstains from destruction of life, setting aside the stick and sword, ashamed to do evil. And he is compassionate and dwells with solitude for the welfare of all living beings. This is one of the precepts of his morality. A monk abandons all thoughts of taking what is not given and abstains from taking what is not given. He accepts only what is given. He establishes himself in purity by abstaining from committing theft. He also abandons all thoughts of leading a life of non-chastity and practice of chastity, remaining virtuous and abstinent from sexual intercourse. A monk abandons all thoughts of telling lie, abstains from slandering, abstains from harsh speech, abstains from frivolous talk. A monk abstains from destroying all seeds and vegetation, abstains from dancing, singing, and watching entertainment. He also abstains from wearing flowers, using perfumes, and using high and luxurious beds and seats, and also abstains from acceptance of gold and silver. He also abstains from acceptance of uncooked cereals and uncooked meats. A monk cannot accept women or maidens, and he abstains from acceptance of male and female slave. He abstains from acceptance of goat, sheep, chicken, pig, elephant, cattle, horse, etc. So, these are the things falls under the Chul seal. Some acts which are prohibited for monks, which comes under the category of Madhyam seal, that is middle morality. There are certain respected Samanas and Brahmanas who living on the food offered out of faith and are given to destroying such things as seeds and vegetation. A bhikkhu abstains from destroying such seed and vegetations. Some Samanas and Brahmanas are given to storing up and using things offered such as cooked rice, beverages, clothing, sandals, beds, eatables, etc. The Buddha has also prohibited monks from watching dance, singing, music, soj recitation, hand clapping, brass instrument playing, drum playing, art exhibition, elephant fights, boxing, horse fights, buffalo fights, etc. Monks were also prohibited from using perfumed baths, using mirrors, painting eyelashes dark, applying powder, lotion to the body, beautifying the face, etc. In this way, Madhyam seal, the middle morality, prohibited monks in luxurious practices, storytelling, etc. The Mahasil, major moralities are very minute in nature. These are psychologically very minute. Here the Buddha has prohibited monks from blind faith and practices which are illogical. The monks are advised to keep themselves away from rites and rituals, astrology, astronomy, future telling, interpretation of dreams. Here there is also instruction to refrain from reading portents of gems, reading characteristics of women, male slaves, female slaves, and animals. Monks were also prohibited from making predictions about the king's participation in wars, about the effects of planet, moons, and sun, predicting rainfall, droughts, etc. There were many practices which were in practice in society during the Buddha's age, were totally prohibited by the Buddha under three headings, namely Chul seal, Madhyam seal, and Mahasil. There is another division, and this is base, through which one can enter into Buddhist Sangha, that is 10 seal and Panch seal. Another division of seal in Vinay Pitak is 10 moralities, moral precepts, 10 seal, and 5 moralities, moral precepts, Panch seal. The 10 seal is necessary for monks and Panch seal for householders also. These 10 moral precepts, this is summary of the moral precepts, that is refraining from killing, refraining from stealing, refraining from sexual misconduct, refraining from false speech, refraining from intoxicants, refraining from untimely food, refraining from dancing, singing, music, vulgar dancing, etc., refraining from using garland, perfume, powder, lotion, etc., refraining from high and lofty weights, and refraining from receiving silver and gold. Two types of actions are manifested in 10 seal, that is moral and immoral. Here there is a command against 10 types of immoral actions related with physical, vocal, and mental activities. After purification of 10 types of immoral actions, the path of a spiritual advancement is clear. Here there is a clear-cut instruction that one should control anger, greed, and desire for sexual pleasure, for mental upliftment. In Milind Paiho, the Milind Paiho text prescribed cultivation of 5 faculties like faith, mindfulness, concentration, perseverance, and wisdom. Here in Buddhist scriptures, it has been prescribed that seal is the key to the success, means the attainment of Nibbana. Again, I have given the detailed description of seal, but I have given only 2 minutes more. So, yeah, I'm just point out some certain things. Again, in Buddhist scriptures, the seal has been divided under 4 headings, that is Patimokh Sambar seal, Indriya Sambar seal, Ajiv Parishuddhi seal, Pachya Nishchit seal. Patimokh Sambar seal, the moral precepts are called Sambar seal. This is the Vinaya, this is in the Vinaya text of Buddhism. Vinaya is the life of Buddhist Sangha. There are 227 rules of morality which has been prescribed by the Buddha for monks and 311 rules for bhikkhunis, nuns. Here in Patimokh, punishments have been prescribed for violation of any rules prescribed in Patimokh. Nobody can violate the rules prescribed in Patimokh in the Sangha. Indriya Sambar seal, this is also very important. The moral precepts related with control of sense organs are called Indriya Sambar. The control of eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, etc. are called Indriya Sambar. These organs can be controlled by mindfulness, sati, smriti. The Indriya Sambar seal is completely related with psychological aspects of human personality. In Buddhism, it is said that alambane chinteti iti chittang visayang vijanati iti yathe. When the sense organs comes into contact with its respective object, then consciousness arises, and the consciousness is typed according to the dominance of the particular sense organ. As for example, when the eye comes into contact with the visible object, then the thought process starts and the eye consciousness, chakhu vijnana, arises. And such type of consciousness creates a great impact on personality. It creates moral consciousness, immoral consciousness, and inoperative consciousness. So the control of Indriya is very important in Buddhist psychology. Ajiv Parishuddhi seal, here, and another is Pachya Nishchit seal. So, here in Buddhism, the 4 requisites have been prescribed: chivar, robes, pindpat, alms, food, and medicine. Urine. Initially, the monks used to use only cow urine, but later on Buddha allowed so many things. And then senasan, bed. Bed was also very important, and there are so many restrictions and instructions on using these. Then the last point, here the Theravada order, the training of seal morality is very important, and this is very wide and minute in nature. For the complete upliftment, there is prescription of 13 dhutangas. The higher training is there. These are the 13 points, like Pansu Kulikang, the monk has to use chivar made of old thrown away clothes, thrown in funeral ground or near highways, etc. Ti Chivarikang, the monks can use only 3 pieces of cloth. Apart from 3 pieces, he cannot use the 4th one or the another one. Pindapatikang, accept food from begging, never accept invitation. Sapadanacharikang takes alms without discrimination among houses. A monk cannot discriminate, this is big house and this is a small house, so I can go to big house and I can get delicious food out of them. Ekasanikang, the use of only 1 seat for taking food. Pattapindikang, the monk take food in only 1 begging bowl. Khalu pacha. So in this way, there are 13 higher training dhutangas which have been prescribed, and then after following the seal, one can complete his mendicant life or even the householder's life, moving towards the ultimate goal, the ultimate reality, and then you will be able to attain the samadhi, purna samadhi, and then to the pragya. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Rana Purushottam, for very clear delineation on pragya, shil and samadhi, and particularly giving details of a shila following the Vinaya Pitaka. So now I think we have 10 minutes for discussion. So pointed questions and queries are permitted. Yeah, please. Madam, yeah.
This question is for Professor Tilakaratne. So one, His Holiness just taught Buddha Palita Vritti, and from our very small understanding, we are Geshe-la students though, but our understanding of independent origination, there is no ceasing, no arising, no annihilation, is that there is no inherent existence of these 8 characteristics, at least in the Prasangika Madhyamika view. So can you share, the dualism, the critique you were presenting, how this would fit with that, your view? And the second thing, you made the point that in Theravada, having given up dualities, one needs to see things as they have come to be. How would that be? How would that happen?
Okay. Thank you very much. Let me try very quick answers. In fact, the dependent origination pratitya samutpada, I think what I said would not contravene what your idea about pratitya samutpada as ultimately rejecting any intrinsic reality. Because the whole point is when something is dependently arisen, the concept has been drawn from already existing philosophy, is if something is Atma or permanent, it can't be dependently arisen. Vice versa, if something is dependently arisen, it can't be Atma or permanently abiding something. So therefore, in the Buddha's usage of this term, of course, these are not contradictory or not without combination. 2 ideas, that things are interdependent and interrelated, and also things can happen that way simply because no one particular thing can stand on its own. So then we go to the non-substantiality, okay. And then your next question was about, pardon me?
About as they have come to be a yathabhut, why is that translation?
Say it again, please, sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just adding on top of the question that you said in line of your teacher, you prefer to translate yathabhut as they have come to be as opposed to as they. So can you please explain why?
Actually, Professor Kalupana's translation of Yatha Bhuta as things have come to be, as I said, grammatically, more literal, because Bhuta is the past participle of Bhu Bhavati, so in that sense. And also his translation is simply not literal correct translation. He came to this translation which I accept based on the idea of Pratitya Samutpada. Pratitya Samutpada is ultimately refers to pratitya samutpanna dharmas that are dependently arisen. So all the dharmas are dependently arisen. When you say something that something is as it is, we are thinking of something like Kantian, Dingen, Unsich or something like that, right? Thing that exists as it is. Which is very much could not go along with the Buddhist idea. So the Pratitya Samutpanna idea is captured by Yatha Bhuta as things have come to be. That is the whole idea of things.
But Bhuta as a noun stands for being also.
Yeah, it can be a noun too. Yes, that's right.
Okay, my question to you here, which is about the debate between the chairperson and Geshe Samdala, the non-duality. So my question, before I create a question, the idea is, because this is a very complicated topic, I like to give the analogy. One, there are so many scholars here, and other, they are the many beginners as well. For all of us, I'll give one example. Duality, non-duality. See, we are all dreaming. We're all dreaming, and we dream of the chairperson and Geshe Awasam sitting next to each other. And Geshe Awasam, we're all sitting near India Gate in Delhi. And then Geshe Awasam, the Professor Bhatt, R.S. Bhatt, the chairperson, is saying that there is only one India Gate in Delhi. One means no duality. Duality means two or more. So he's saying there's only one India Gate in Delhi. And Professor Geshe Awasam is saying that there is no Statue of Liberty in Delhi. Right? There's no Statue of Liberty means there's no two Statue of Liberty. Two or three Statue of Liberty is dissolved. Duality is dissolved. Professor Bhatt is saying that there's only one India Gate in Delhi. Again, the duality is dissolved. In both cases, duality is dissolved. You are what? You are dreaming. Right? And then you understand, okay, both of them are talking about duality. So one is talking about the duality, that something is there as one. One is talking about the duality that nothing is there in the dream. The Statue of Liberty does not at all exist in the dream. When you wake up, just see who tallies which of the two. So my question to the two of you is whether or not how I presented in the form of the analogy really reflects your thoughts. This is my question. Thank you.
Really, it's a very interesting analysis. But when we say there is no Statue of Liberty in Delhi, it means it is somewhere else. It is in America. No, but a dream is also a representation of our waking experience. Had we not had experience of
Indian Statue of Liberty.
Indian, of course. Yeah, what happens is that two experiences are mixed up here. One is experience of Indianness and other is experience of a Statue of Liberty. In themselves, both the experiences are real, but when they are combined, then it becomes illusory. Yeah. Anyway, it's a very interesting analysis that you have given. Now I think
to be more practical, non-duality doesn't need to be just to be lifted to the state of meditative equipoise or something like that. Non-duality always, I feel, can be brought in our daily life. In every the moment you open your eyes until you go to sleep. And after sleep, you have no control unless you have a very good meditation, practice. So, suppose we get angry, and when we get angry, we see the object, or suppose we get attached to something, then that object is presented to us in a very presentable way, or very unpresentable in the case of anger, right? So now, why this comes into existence, and why this happens? The appearance and the reality. So it works here, the non-duality. The moment we get these kind of afflictions in our mind, afflictive emotions, then it is totally due to misperception of the object and not being able to understand the reality as it is, and therefore the anger comes. There is a projection of some negativity on the object, and then anger arises. If the reality is understood and reality is observed, perceived as it is, then there is no chance of anger, there is no chance of afflictive emotions. So in any case, whatever we perceive or live, non-duality works very well. So therefore, to understand reality is a kind of exercise that you must dwell every time in your life.
I think a detailed analysis of concepts of duality and non-duality require a separate seminar wherein we may not only delineate on conceptual analysis, but also interrelationship between duality and non-duality, the realms where you have operation of duality and non-duality. Say for example, ethical realm is a realm of duality, but spirituality has to be a realm of non-duality, but then it requires in-depth discussion. I hope Geshe-la would have a seminar on this. You can suggest on that.
Yeah,
ICPR will be, my organization will be willing to collaborate with you on this. Definitely, we will collaborate.
Since there are many beginners, I thought that since I could not explain upper pratyaya, which apparently seems not depending on others, which means independent, but according to the Acharya Chandakirti in his Prasanapada, upper pratyaya means not depending on others' teachings. So one has to realize that through one's own understanding, then one realizes the Shunyata or the Tattva, or as it is, in the direct form as it is. Otherwise, it cannot be understood or it cannot be realized just depending on the teachings or instructions of other people. That is the meaning which Professor Murthy took it as not depending on other means other elements, right? Since there are many students who are learning, so I thought this may be useful.
Upper means other, upper means not other.
Yeah, upper pratyaya. So it is
so I'm going to just jump in with my question now. I really appreciate the first two talks.
I think just only 1 minute is left.
1 minute? Well, no, it's not possible. So we'll have to push a little bit beyond. But so what's really interesting for me about the first two talks particularly is that I think what it really points to, I think what Professor Asanga Tilak Ratnaji said was, Shunyata is something you do, and that's pointed to in these, along with Shila. And this is also how Professor Geshe Nangwang Samtenji ended his talk, that this is an experience, you engage it in practice, right? And this to me points more generally to when we're doing philosophy in the Indian context and we look at it historically from the history of ideas perspective, that actually when we start looking, we see that these are really more phenomenological projects at the beginning, yeah? And then at a certain point, and this is particularly to Samtenji's point, that when there's a dialogue that begins, a very rich one, particularly with the Pramana schools, Nyaya tradition, Vaisheshika, etc., there's a need to take what was really primarily a phenomenological project and turn it into an ontological project. And that's exactly where we start seeing these, what appear to be common threads, but really aren't common threads, right? And that's why you're pointing to Nagarjuna's tattva as not the tattva that we might otherwise have thought. It's a phenomenological issue for him, really. And that gets us back to the early ideas. And that's why we often, people say, like, Nagarjuna is reviving, say, like a Sutta Nipata-like reading of early Buddhism or something like that. And so I think it's helpful, and I just more like want to ask how you guys engage this idea, whether you think that's a good way of trying to deal with that issue that is clearly, you guys are trying to grapple with here. And I think the history of ideas way of doing that might help solve the problem in some way, or for us at least as historians or thinkers of these issues. So
during lunch break, I think you can discuss with this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but to answer this in one sentence, the phenomenological observation is very important because they are related with the spiritual practice. Otherwise, it is not related to our life. And this phenomenological approach takes us to ontological approach. Because without understanding what is there, we cannot, we have to understand what is there, and then accordingly we have to experience that. So therefore these are all, in India, in general and particularly in Buddhism, the philosophical, philosophy and the spiritual practice are inextricably associated, We cannot leave the other untouched.
Friends,
thank you.
On behalf of the organizers, I sincerely thank the three learned scholars for their brilliant presentations, and also all those who contributed in the discussion and also in listening to the deliberation. Thank you very much.
With this, we have come to the end of our program, this session. Now, may I request Kungoi Tsang Gebula, Secretary of Bureau of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, to offer the mementos to our speaker, please. Our chairperson, Professor S.R. Bhatt. Gishing on something la. Professor Asanga Tilak Ratne ji. Dr. Rana Purushottam ji.
I have several gifts to Sri Lankan people because I have the same. Your pen. Oh, yeah, okay, that's
Thank you, Kungula.